The Brave Little Chili and the Return of Spring. Once upon a time, in a peaceful little village nestled between rolling green hills, there lived a tiny but fearless chili named Mircho. Though he was small in size, his bright red color and fiery personality made him stand out among all the other vegetables in the garden. The villagers admired him not just for his spicy nature, but also for his sharp wit and unwavering courage. Mircho loved his village, where every season brought new beauty. But there was one season he loved the most: spring. It was the time when flowers bloomed, trees swayed with fresh green leaves, and birds filled the air with their joyful songs. But this year, something was terribly wrong: the vanishing of spring. The trees that should have been lush and green were instead dry and lifeless. Flowers that were supposed to bloom stood wilted and dull. The birds that usually sang at dawn were eerily silent. A strange sadness loomed over the village, and the villagers whispered among themselves, wondering why spring had not arrived. The elders of the village gathered in the town square, their wrinkled faces filled with concern. One of them, a wise old man with a long silver beard, spoke in a trembling voice. "This has never happened before. Every year the spring fairy visits our land and waves her magical wand, filling the world with life, but she is nowhere to be seen." A deep silence fell over the crowd. The villagers exchanged worried glances. Had something terrible happened to the spring fairy? Mircho clenched his tiny fists. He could not stand by and watch his beloved village fall into despair. If the spring fairy was in trouble, he would find her and bring her back. A journey into the unknown, determined, Mircho set off into the dark and mysterious forest beyond the village. The trees here stood tall and twisted, their bare branches reaching for the sky like ghostly fingers. A chilling wind howled through the air, making the leaves rustle like whispered secrets. As he ventured deeper, he spotted a small, trembling figure perched on a dry branch. It was a tiny sparrow, its feathers dull and ruffled, its eyes filled with sadness. Mircho approached gently and asked, "Little bird, why do you look so sad?" The sparrow let out a sorrowful chirp and replied, "Spring has been stolen. The spring fairy is trapped in the dark caves of the wicked ogre. He has locked her in magical chains. And now, spring will never return." Mircho's eyes widened, so that's why everything had lost its color and life. Without wasting a moment, he asked, "Where is this ogre's cave?" The sparrow hesitated before pointing its tiny wing towards a distant mountain, where a dark cave loomed like a gaping mouth. Mircho thanked the sparrow and rushed toward the cave, his heart burning with determination. A fiery plan. When he reached the cave, Mircho peered inside cautiously. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and something terribly foul. The cave was dimly lit by flickering torches, and at its center, a terrifying sight awaited him. The spring fairy sat on a rock, her wings drooping, her glow dimmed, and her wrists bound by golden magical chains that shimmered in the torchlight. She looked weak, as if all her magic had been drained away. And there, beside her, snored the ogre. He was a massive, monstrous creature, with a face covered in warts and teeth as large as Mircho himself. His snores echoed like thunder, shaking the cave walls. Mircho knew that a direct fight would be impossible. He needed to outsmart this beast. Then, an idea sparked in his clever little mind. His greatest strength was not just his bravery, but his spiciness. He carefully tiptoed to a large bowl of food sitting beside the ogre's bed. With a mischievous grin, he sprinkled his hottest chili powder all over the meal. Then he hid behind a rock and waited. Moments later, the ogre snorted awake and reached for his food, stuffing a giant handful into his mouth. The effect was instant. The ogre's face turned red, brighter than a sunset. His eyes watered, his tongue burned, and he let out a roar of agony. He thrashed around, desperately searching for water, but Mircho had already emptied every jug in the cave. "Fire! Fire in my mouth!" the ogre bellowed, clutching his throat. Unable to bear the heat, he stampeded out of the cave, knocking down everything in his path, and disappeared into the distance, never to be seen again. The return of spring. Mircho wasted no time. He rushed to the spring fairy and used all his strength to break the golden chains. The moment the last chain shattered, the fairy's glow returned, and she rose into the air, her wings sparkling like diamonds. She smiled at Mircho, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You have saved me, little one, and now let us bring spring back." She raised her magical wand, and with a gentle flick, a dazzling golden light spread across the sky. Like a wave, the magic washed over the land. The trees turned green, their leaves unfurling like waking dreams. Flowers burst into bloom, painting the fields in shades of pink, yellow, and blue. Birds soared into the sky, their songs ringing out with joy. The entire world came back to life, a hero remembered forever. The spring fairy turned to Mircho and said, "You have not only saved me, but also saved the world from eternal darkness. You are a true hero." Mircho smiled humbly. "I only did what was right. I just wanted my village to be happy again." The fairy nodded. "For your kindness and bravery, I grant your village a special blessing. Spring will always return, year after year, bringing joy and abundance." Then, in a burst of radiant light, she rose into the sky, her magic shining like the sun. Back in the village, the people rejoiced. They danced, sang, and celebrated the return of spring. And from that day on, Mircho's name was spoken with honor and pride. Every year, as the first flowers bloomed and the birds began to sing, the villagers would tell the story of the brave little Chili who saved the world. And so the legend of Mircho the Brave lived on forever.